Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is just a quick fire on an item that has been circulating in by social media. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding of what actually happened. Let's just hear this report.
Our next story is from South Africa. It goes to polls this summer. It was supposed to be a clash between the current president and his predecessor, Cyril Ramaphosa versus Jacob Zuma. But now there's a major twist in the tale. Zuma has been disqualified. South Africa's Electoral Commission has passed an order. They've barred Jacob Zuma from contesting. He is a former president. He led the country from 2009 to 2018. He's still massively popular and a thorn in the ruling party's side. So will he still be able to run for president? What will his exit mean for the South African election? And why has he been barred in the first place? Our next report has the answers.
South Africa's ruling party has been given a shot in the arm. A dangerous opponent is out of the way. Friend turned foe, Jacob Zuma.
In the case of former President Zuma, yes, we did receive an objection, which has been upheld.
Zuma has been barred from the upcoming election thanks to a technicality. And this has lifted the hopes of South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, who really needed this ahead of the election on the 29th of May. You see, South Africa has been ruled by one political party continuously for 3 decades, the ANC. It's the party of Nelson Mandela, the party at the forefront of the fight against institutionalized racism, apartheid. Because of Mandela and his legacy, the ANC has kept winning elections. Despite numerous scams, declining economic growth, and poor governance. But South Africans are slowly losing faith. Every year, the ANC bleeds votes. And this year, it was set to face a major blow. Opinion polls say that the ANC will get less than 50% of the vote, meaning they'll need to form a coalition if they want to remain in power. This is unprecedented in post apartheid South Africa. It's a wake up call for the ANC. So, what has the party decided to do? Apparently, go after the competition. Especially one man, a man they know well, former president and ANC leader Jacob Zuma. Zuma was modern South Africa's fourth president. He ruled from 2009 to 2018, and in many ways, he's emblematic of the malaise in the ANC. Zuma is an accused in a defense procurement scam from the 1990s when he was vice president. Zuma was slammed for his close ties to the Indian origin Gupta family, who apparently went about capturing the state under his watch, allegedly with his blessing. At one point, Zuma was even called Zupta to highlight his ties with the Gupta family. So, Zuma has seen his fair share of controversy, but he is yet to be convicted. Zuma didn't cooperate while being investigated for corruption and defied court orders, so he was sentenced to 15 months in prison. Zuma went to jail in July 2021. He was let out in 2 months on medical parole, but this doesn't change the fact that he received a 15-month sentence. That sentence disqualifies him from the upcoming election. In South Africa, anyone sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine cannot stand for election. So, Zuma has been disqualified. The ANC challenged Zuma's candidacy after he joined a rival party. Zuma's new party was expected to get about 12% of the vote. 12% that the ANC desperately needs to maintain its majority in parliament. So they've been trying their best to dismantle the competition. Both Zuma and his party have been in the crosshairs, and it seems the ANC has managed to land a strike. Will this be enough? Will Zuma's disqualification pave the way for the ANC's return?
We can stop right there. I think it is important to get the reality, the facts right. As much as Zuma has been disqualified from contesting in the 29th May election, people have got to understand that the South African system, they do not elect a president in the same way that Zimbabwe or the US elects a president. So it's not as if Zuma was on the ballot paper as the presidential candidate. He wasn't. South Africa's system, you elect members of parliament, and whichever party wins the majority can then elect who they want to lead that party. So in this particular case, I think as much as, yes, maybe the fact that he's not even contesting as one of the parliamentary candidates may damage the party, MK's prospects, I don't think it is really a serious blow. He will still be out there campaigning for the MK. And the most important thing here is that even if he was to win the projected 12%, that would not have been enough for him to be elected president in his own party with 12%. So I don't think it was a question of him becoming president that is really a threat here. What is important here is that the 12% that MK is projected to get, most of it will be votes that would have gone to ANC. And already ANC is very close to the 50%. And so the 12% minus 50 will get them below the 50%. And therefore then lose the outright majority that they have enjoyed for the last 30 decades. The truth of what people should understand here is that ANC have ruled South Africa for the last 30 years. The track record speaks for itself. The party has been incredibly incompetent, corrupt, and South Africa's economy is in serious trouble as a result of ANC misrule. Many South Africans have been voting for ANC these last 30 years on the back of Nelson Mandela's legacy. This was the party of Nelson Mandela, an iconic leader who had vision. The irony is, if Nelson Mandela had wanted South Africa to be a de facto or de jure one-party state, then you would not have worked so hard to establish the democratic institutions. And that is his legacy. That is Mandela's legacy to South Africa. He gave that country a healthy and functioning democracy. South Africans, I believe, have misunderstood that. These last 30 years of voting for ANC on the back of Nelson Mandela's legacy is a complete misunderstanding of what Nelson Mandela stood for. He wanted South Africa to be a multi-party, a healthy and functioning multi-party democracy. And in a healthy and functioning multi-party democracy, leaders should be elected on merit, not on some historic legacy. And therefore, this present election this year for South Africa could be a historic one on that basis. South Africans may be finally waking up to the reality that they are a multi-party democracy, that leaders should be elected on merit, not on some legacy. That is what Nelson Mandela himself would have wanted. It is very likely that the ANC will lose its majority this year. Even if they were to come back in a form of a coalition, that will establish a fundamental shift in South African politics, where the electorate are finally realizing that they can hold those in positions of power and authority to account. If they fail to perform, they can remove them from office. It will come as a shock to some of the ANC leaders who have been riding on Nelson Mandela's legacy and expected that they would remain in power and rule South Africa until kingdom come. South Africa is a democratic country. And I believe that when history comes to be written, South Africans will appreciate that that was Nelson Mandela's greatest legacy to that country. In many ways, that wake-up call in South Africa could be a turning point for the whole of Southern African region. The ANC we have seen over the last 30 years has been a curse to countries like Zimbabwe. We cannot deny that ever since Nelson Mandela left the scene, the successive South African regimes have been propping up the ZANU-PF dictatorship. And much more so recently. In November 2022, the ANC at their Congress, in which they made a resolution that they would not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. An outrageous resolution. Who are they to make a resolution that they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe? Surely, who rules Zimbabwe should be a matter of the people of Zimbabwe themselves in a free, fair, and credible election. If there's anything that the ANC should have done, is make a resolution that they would want to see free, fair, and credible elections in Zimbabwe. After decades of rigged elections. The will of the people of Zimbabwe should be respected. That is what would have made ANC a more meaningful party to the people of Zimbabwe, at least, if not the whole region. But instead, they decided they were going to pop up the ZANU-PF dictatorship. And they have. The regional body, SADC, sent election observers to the 2023 Zimbabwe elections. Their report was scathing. The election was flawed and illegal. The continental body, AU, sent an election observer They too condemned the election process. By all accounts, SADC should have stood up and said, no, they are not going to give ZANU-PF political legitimacy. But they did not do that. They somehow turned a blind eye, and although they've not come out and categorically endorsed Mnangagwa, they did not condemn him either. The regional body has upheld the SADC election report condemning the elections. But it's one of those reports that we acknowledged and then filed away. No action, no further action was ever taken. Zimbabwe right now, we are stuck with an illegitimate regime. And the implosion of the Triple C party has only made our political situation even more desperate. It turned out that Nelson Chamisa and company were hell-bent on participating in those flawed elections last year, as they've done in the past, for the sake of a few gravy train seats that they were going to get from ZANU-PF. There's no denying that by participating in those flawed elections, Triple C gave the process legitimacy. And by insisting in taking up the gravy train seats, even after SADC and AU had condemned the process, is itself to be regretted. But by accepting those gravy train seats, they did indeed endorse the process as being acceptable. Their argument that, oh, those were liberated zones is a foolish argument. Absolutely foolish. The electoral process was flawed. The voters' roll, which affected everybody, the whole country, not just rural areas, but urban centers as well, was so flawed that ZEC itself failed to produce a verified voters' roll. And so for ANC to accept their few gravy train seats in the urban centers and pretend that the election in the urban centers were free, fair, and credible, but not everywhere else, was just nonsense. But that decision must have worked in favor of those in the SADC leaders who did not want to deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. And it is no secret that ANC leaders did not want to deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. So these elections in South Africa are in many ways a very important election and will have serious ramifications in the region, if not on the whole of Africa. We could be witnessing here the beginning of the wake-up call of the African, or at least South African electorate. They're beginning to realize that democracy, a healthy and functioning democracy, means a lot more than blind loyalty to an individual or a party. That is as it should be. That is what makes democracy such a healthy and functioning system. No one should be riding on the laurels of history. ZANU-PF has been in power for the last 43 years. And people like Mnangagwa believe ZANU-PF should rule because we are the party that liberated the country, that ended white colonial rule. No, you should rule because you have the mandate of the people in a free, fair, and credible election process. That is the only mandate that matters. ZANU-PF's historic background that it fought the war of liberation is irrelevant. ZANU-PF fought to end white colonial rule, white colonial domination, to end the whites denying the ordinary people of Zimbabwe a meaningful say in the governance of the country. If all we got at the end of the white colonial rule is replacing one white oppressor with a black one, then of course it's totally meaningless. We are fighting again for the same right to be heard, which is absolutely ridiculous. This could end up being an endless cycle. I think people of Zimbabwe should be watching the elections in South Africa with greatest interest. What we could be witnessing here is a turning point. If the South African electorate finally open their eyes and elect, or rather deny ANC the majority, it's an important historic milestone in South Africa, but also in Zimbabwe and beyond. Democracy does not mean blind loyalty to an individual or to a party. That would be the number one message that the South Africans would deliver on the 29th of May. And I think we should be watching those elections with great interest and following them, because I believe it could be a turning point for Zimbabwe as well. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.